Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be talking about the content release schedule of the beginning of an expansion. Now, of course, this is largely pulling from our experiences in the last two expansions, and that of Endwalker and Dawntrail, but it's actually a topic that's been around for way longer than that, and it's going to
What's he playing on Twitch? Is he live right now?
be, well, I guess interesting, kind of just spitting off the dome when it comes to a lot of these topics in this video.
Okay.
Now, this is not being spurred on by nothing. I saw an article over on PC Gamer where the author, Harvey Randall, talks about just me.
That was the Harvey Randall article. We went through that on stream the other day, and let me tell you, Harvey let it all out. He did not pull any punches in this article. It was actually amazing. I loved the article. I completely agreed with it, and he was bold as hell in saying some of this stuff. Like, you have to be a special kind of confident to make an article that's literally like FF14 isn't earning your sub money. Meanwhile, World of Warcraft has a ton of content coming up. Like, you realize the hornet's nest that you were poking with an article like this. But he had a lot of very good points in it. The article showed me that Harvey Randall is a person who loves Final Fantasy XIV, who cares a lot about the game, who has invested a lot of time and energy into the game, and was not just being a hater, but had realistic criticisms that were based. So if you haven't looked into this article, you should. But I just want to say, yes, everybody heard about this article.
Making the game worth its money. In fact, the exact title is Final Fantasy XIV's Next Big Challenge, making players feel like they're getting their monthly subs worth, not just funding Square's flops while WoW stacks value. And we'll talk about that last part
He really said it.
Now, I'm not going to be just reading through the article for this video. I'm going to include it as a link in the description, and I highly recommend you go over there and read it, especially if you're someone who has been disparaged with the beginning of the launch of the expansion. And a lot of people have been. You definitely shouldn't feel bad about having criticisms, no matter how many times someone tells you to just go play something else. However,
but Yoshi P said it again, Haps. He said it again in the latest live letter at the end. Yoshi P really said, go play. Don't forget, there's a ton of other games to play. He said, I know we're releasing the 24-man boss fight at Christmas Eve, but you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it whenever. And don't forget, there's other games you can play too. You know, that's crazy to say that when you're asking people to pay a monthly sub fee.
Quick paraphrase of the article, I suppose. Dawntrail continuing Square Enix's kind of stale release schedule for Final Fantasy XIV, just kind of taking its toll on the author. You know, they talk about how predictability is good, but how a lot of things that they want to be excited about, things that were teased for the expansion, are so far out that it's just kind of hard to stay excited for them. At the beginning of the expansion could really use some help in that regard. Not to mention the extra 2 weeks per patch cycle taking its toll, especially after Endwalker's flurry of misses, both in terms of content and reward, not to mention drawing comparisons to WoW actually doing a pretty decent job as of late. We're not during the Exodus times anymore. We can't pretend like they're still going. And while WoW definitely has its problems, and the number of WoW creators I see on socials talking about those things, such as delve balancing and whatnot, there's definitely things. I mean, I've been witnessing it too. I remember the Sunken Temple problem in Season of Discovery. A lot of people I know hopped off after that. Mop Remix didn't really seem to hold any sort of long-term, I guess, whatever excitement. You know, Classic and Hardcore Classic aren't really pulling what they used to. Classic does, but you know, Cataclysm.
Okay, Happy. Have you played WoW? Have you been playing WoW at all? Because you can't come to conclusions about WoW's content from watching videos from people about what's going on in the game, because people will say all kinds of crazy shit to get clicks on YouTube, and so I wouldn't make any judgment calls about this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that the game doesn't have problems. It certainly does. It's like we were just talking about this Bellular video. I haven't watched it yet. But about Blizzard's please take quality seriously, about how buggy the game is, and it is. It's buggy as hell. So it's definitely things to criticize. But like when it comes to Mop Remix, for example, like I had a ton of fun with that, and it was pretty successful from what I've seen. They're bringing back Plunderstorm pretty soon, and that had mixed reviews, of course, but apparently it was good enough for them to bring it back. But the point is, WoW is turning out content. Okay, literally, they just made a post saying, hey, surprise, we're releasing a new zone for you guys in like December. Yeah, you didn't, it's an incremental patch, 11.0.7. It's got a freaking zone in it. So not only do we have the anniversary event, which is a buttload of content, a new raid, it's got like new instance content in it, and classic time walking, which is new. But before we're even going to be done with that, they're releasing a zone, the Siren Isle. And then after that, there is also Plunder Storm coming back and stuff. So they are, and apparently I've heard that there's other stuff going on. There's rumors that some exciting thing is going to happen regarding hardcore this month. And I don't know what it is yet, but I've heard rumors about that. So they have been turning out content is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
There's been a lot of comparisons there with problems.
What I'm saying is I don't think Happy has played WoW. Sorry. I don't think Happy has played WoW. So I wouldn't make judgments about the content if you haven't played it yourself. Don't just take for face value what YouTubers have to say.
A lot of avenues. I shouldn't talk about it too in depth. But the thing is, they've at least been attempting to, as the author puts it,
play WoW with me, Happy.
Add value to their monthly subscription by having all these options, having pretty frequent content releases, especially here at the beginning of their latest expansion. And they're totally right. Compared to Final Fantasy XIV, which basically everything takes, a full patch cycle for anything to really happen, plus the long wait for that long form content to even hit the game. Like I said, I'm only paraphrasing. I could be saying a lot of this better, but I do implore that you actually read that article.
Yeah, it's a good article.
Clicks because we're using it as a reference here, but it's very well written, and a lot of people, I think, will definitely feel what the author is talking about.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think anyone can deny the troubles we've had since Endwalker. And I'm going to say since Endwalker, because while Shadowbringers obviously had the issues in 2020 where we had to wait a lot longer for patches, there was at least kind of an understanding and a reason as to why all of that was happening. And a lot of very important story beats and the kind of work towards Endwalker kept everyone excited. A lot of people started taking on content they hadn't before, whether that was Eureka or ocean fishing, big fishing, deep dungeon.
He got that
souls.
title.
We saw.
He got World Class Troller. He actually got this title, which is insane. This is a crazy achievement.
A lot of people branch out and go through their bucket list during that time, which means they don't have a bucket list, or not as long of one, to go through now when they're feeling like they need to be drawing out a little bit more time until the next patch. Kind of a double-edged sword that's carried over from that. But Endwalker had a lot of issues, and many may call me a fanboy of the game, but I've had open criticisms about Endwalker's kind of one-and-done content philosophy, whether that be by design or simply because they just didn't give it good enough rewards. Yeah, I know, we're going to talk about that again, but it is a really, really important topic. Getting people to do something once, even if it's good, doesn't matter if there aren't people occupying the content to get other people doing it.
What?
People to do something once, even if it's good, doesn't matter if there aren't people occupying the content to get other people doing it.
That's what I'm saying. That's the issue with when you take this philosophy of do it at your own pace, do it whenever you feel like it. That's great and all, and it's nice to be so chill and relaxed. But when you take it to this extreme that FF14 has lately, then it just means that everybody's going to be logging in whenever they want to do it. And what does this mean? They're not going to be logging in at the same times. So there's not this social hype that the MMO, that makes an MMO feel alive, that makes the MMO exciting, that makes it the place to be. And people cry all the time about FOMO, and obviously lots of FOMO is really bad, but a little FOMO isn't that bad. A little bit of feeling like there's something going on in the MMO is healthy and good. You need to feel like there's something to miss out on. Otherwise, why would you pay $15 a month? Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. And by the way, I hate to say this. Well, no, I don't. I don't hate to say this. Whenever I put out that video in Endwalker patches about how the patches weren't good, and I was like very critical of the game, I got so much shit for that at the time. I got so much hate from people from that at the time. Everybody was super, super mad. And ever since, I've heard nothing but people repeat the exact same points that I made. And I'm not saying that they're only repeating the points that I made because they're true. because this is the reality of the situation. But it's just funny how, in retrospect, I feel like I have been vindicated so many times, and I was completely accurate in what I had to say then. Yeah, it's like at the time, it's just funny how different things are. And I remember even right before Dawntrail came out, and people were like, I still had people mad at me that I had made a critical video about the state of the game and all these issues like lack of replayability, lack of the exciting MMO content for us to do together. Even right before Dawntrail came out, I was still hearing a hate from people. And now I don't hear it anymore. Ever since Dawntrail, nobody, everybody seems to be in agreement now. And now everyone's like, wow, back in Endwalker is when these issues first appeared. Yeah, back when Zepla first said it.
It essentially just flatlines as soon as the first wave of people get by, and that's not how you need to make things for MMOs. I feel that way.
I will say, though, by the way, though, I will say that I do regret how angry I was. That's the only thing I regret. I wish that had been more calm. But that's something that I've learned and I will take with me into the future.
Get by, and that's not how you need to make things for MMOs. I feel that way about a lot of stuff. The article does actually also echo a lot of those sentiments with Variant, Criterion, and Island Sanctuary. So really on the same page with a lot of stuff as the author. And then, just like they say, you add on those 2 weeks, and each of those experiments, they kind of feel worse. Not to mention we had a couple of exhausting ultimates, a raid tier that caused mass hysteria with Abyssos, and we just saw widespread burnout and lack of interest in what was being done across
That is true.
Endwalker.
Yeah, we also had widespread burnout from the raids that were pretty rough. Like, I think top was just the needle. That's not a. I was about to say. That's the needle that broke the haystack, but that's not an expression. What does that even mean? Like, it's something about a camel's back, the needle. Forget it. Just forget it.
Oh, and to be clear,
I don't know what it was.
The article states it's a 3.5 month patch cycle that we had before. That is now a 4-month patch cycle. That's what the dev team said.
It's longer than 4 months, Happy. It's 4.5 months.
But that's not entirely true. Most people will perceive 4 months as 16 weeks. Yes, most people are willing to accept that there's occasionally 5 Tuesdays in a month, but I think that's what everybody thinks when they hear 4 months. And when they hear 3.5 months, they think 14 weeks. In reality, the 3.5 months was 17 weeks. And the now 4 months is 19, sometimes 20 weeks, because the dev team does get a week off in summer and a week off in winter. Not like they all leave the office for good during that time, but they have that extra weeks of vacation just so they can stay sane. And quite frankly, I get it. But sometimes that might lead to a 20-week cycle, and we did get one of those in Endwalker.
Yeah.
Now, all of that, those are all issues that need to be addressed in isolation. You don't want raid tiers that cause the problems Abyssos cause. While you do want ultimates to be a high level of challenge, we have seen nothing but drama after drama-filled ultimate, whether it be because of third-party tools or because of the exhaustion of the players that are taking it on. I'm particularly worried about Fru for people who just went through the most recent Savage tier and plan to take on Fru as one of their first ultimates. Not that they can't do it, but I am worried after seeing what happened with DSR and top, because a lot of people did the same thing then after getting into Endwalker and then going into DSR. And we saw a lot of people breaking down in tears and crying after clearing after weeks or months. And it's a lot. It's a lot of emotion to put into a game. It's a lot of energy to put into a game. And as much as
So is he saying that he's worried about people burning out that have just cleared a Savage tier that are then going to go into the new Ultimate raid? Because it's like a lot happening all. It's like the issue with DSR and top, an issue was they were released kind of back to back. And so we didn't have time to rest. We needed top to be released much later in the expansion's life cycle so that people would still have time to recover their energy and stuff from DSR. Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about. I haven't even considered that before, but I know for me, top burned me out hard, but I had just done DSR. I did DSR, which was the best gaming experience I think I've ever had, ever, across any game. It was just phenomenal. And then immediately after that, I went to top, which was horrible. It was just rough. Like, I was exhausted. I was tired. I shouldn't have done it straight away. I've learned a lot from that experience. I didn't have like a raid team ready to go, and we were just like trying to figure out roles while we're progging, and it was kind of a disaster. Yeah, it's just like it's exhausting. It's exhausting. He's right. When you talk about progging and ultimate, this takes a tremendous amount of time, effort, and energy. Think about the fact that for DSR, we had a team with the schedule completely cleared out. We had like gamers who were experienced players who were ready for this, who were organizing, we were, I don't know how long we were going each day, 6 to 8 hours a day, maybe. And we were extremely organized, and it took us a week and a half doing that every day. Like, nobody going to work, nobody doing anything with IRL. We just like we blasted, and you think about that, how long that still took us. For the most people who need to fit this in after work or outside other responsibilities, yeah, it can be pretty exhausting.
Just those of us who do it enjoy it. That doesn't mean it doesn't have its effects on others and how they perceive doing that content and populating that content going forward.
But then they're going to release
all of those are issues.
24
They've
man
all been
right after. They said they're going to release. Well, I guess the 24 man isn't going to be very hard. So
at least talked about, acknowledged, considered, and we'll see how they go. I don't even think that is the crux of the problem. And I've stated this before.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Long form content takes too long to get out. And again, the article highlights that type of content, whether it be exploration zones, deep dungeons, cosmic exploration, really anything that isn't what we knew for a decade straight, it doesn't happen until 6 to 12 months after the expansion has released.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if Square Enix didn't have the goodwill that they have with 14, if they didn't have the people who casually log in and chat, do roulettes every day, if they didn't have a solid mix of those casual to mid-core players that are really dedicated and consider it basically a second home, it would be a problem because they don't have anything that will naturally, and I don't want to mean force someone to play, I mean encourage somebody to play during that time. The micro goals they have are nice, but they just don't make up.
So what did y'all do in Heaven's Ward and Realm Reborn? Because, look, I started playing in the middle of Heaven's Ward. I was a brand new player. So I don't know what it was like being an end game of FF14 in Realm Reborn and Heaven's Ward. I have no idea, really, because I was brand new at the time. So without an exploration zone, what did you do at the end of the expansion? Like, what was keeping people subbed at that time that's not there now? Because I actually have no idea. Relic weapons. How early was the relic weapons added? Yeah, I guess you were doing relic weapons? World content. That's my question. I left a video on reactions about the same topic. Oh, okay. I'll check it out. Maybe. Anima weapons were pretty intense. How long would it take you to do? Larry did a video on relic weapons a few days ago. It started much earlier. Well, he was doing that back then. He's an older player than me, I think. World content. Fates mattered. How did fates matter? Was that for your relics? Because I went back and I did Heaven's Ward relics like way after that content was done. Anyway, I don't want to get off on a huge tangent. I was just wondering.
Everything that you need, these big things that you spent years or like a year sharing around the world at various venues, at fan fests, live, they can't then take another year. They can't be things that are 2 years out.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid.
It doesn't do good enough. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about what our patches look like.
That's true. Like, you have a fan fest where they announce this exciting things like Beastmaster, like new exploration zones, and we all get excited, and then we won't actually have that content to play for at least a year, maybe more. Like, the next fan fest is going to be announced around the time that we're doing the content that was announced to the last fan fest, and the fan fest is happening every 2 years. Like, that's crazy. That's insane. we gotta figure out a way to move some of this exciting MMO style content earlier. Like basically they need more resources. I said this when I talked about this article, and I'm going to keep saying it. I think they just don't have the money. I think that Square Enix is taking the money that FFXIV makes and isn't putting the money back in to FFXIV. I felt like that since the very beginning, though. I have always felt this way about it. No matter how good FF14 did, I always felt like we are living on this shoestring budget.
And what I think they could do to improve this. Not that I think they will, but I got to throw my 2 cents in there. So, speaking about Dawntrail in particular now. Dawntrail has exacerbated this issue in a completely different way than most people are talking about. Yes, we do have our standard release, and gotta give them credit. Quality of life is always good. We did get the graphical update this time around, not without its hiccups. We did get updates to the character creator that were part of some feedback that was received from the benchmark, which was a great turnaround on that, and it was good to finally see some changes, even if most people would say they still have some way to go and we need more options overall.
Yes, we do.
Not to mention Fates. They've updated the gemstone system. We want little things like that. We want new treasure maps. We want updates to the Fate system. We want updates to the way that we approach the game, doing the exact same things we did before. We don't not want any of those things.
Oh my God. They need to innovate with Fates hard. Like, I don't know if you have been doing the shared Fates farm, but my God, like the Fates have remained almost entirely the same for the entire lifetime of this video game. And there is so much more that they could do to make them more exciting and interesting than they are. They've like adding the little forlorn maiden and adding the currency is great and all, but come on, like we can do more than this when so much of the game content is asking you to spam freaking Fates.
But they are, in essence, the same things that we have been doing.
That's what I was saying.
Didn't enjoy doing them before. There's very little likelihood that that will improve. So, on top of...
Like, I've actually gotten to a point where I remember even when Baja came out. Okay. I'm so tired of Fates at this point. When Baja came out, which Baja was good content that we liked, and we often look back on with fondness, and we wish it was here right now, like a new Baja. Even then, I remember seeing Baja and I'm like, holy shit, more Fate farming. Here we go again, you know? And I think a lot of people probably feel the same way.
Doing all of the same things and then having ups and downs regarding job balance or whatever. They also fumbled the post-release schedule. Now, I don't mean the normal mode and the savage mode. That was all as it normally is, even though a lot of people expected it to change. It's the news and the way that they stayed engaged with the community post-release. Dawntrail release.
What do you mean?
And Yoshida had mentioned that he wanted to do a Dawntrail roadmap stream. Same thing they did in Endwalker. It generated a lot of hype, a lot of discussion, a little bit of lost memory. I goldfish memoried certain things, and I would say, oh yeah, he said this, and then go back and be like, oh no, I was totally wrong. But the bottom line is it gave us a good idea of what we were going to be looking forward to on top of things that would then be announced as bonuses. So like it just gave us a really nice, again, the roadmap to do. They never did it. We got a fan festival in China and Korea, which were just teasing the release of Dawntrail in those regions. So they didn't really offer anything new, minus a couple of new screenshots at each. I think there was like 4 new.
Oh my God. That's true. I didn't even think about this. They didn't do the roadmap. Oh my God. And you know why they didn't do the roadmap? It's because they don't have one. It's because they don't have one. It's because they don't have one. I say this because at the media tour, Yoshi P said to us, we're going to see how players react to the main story quests, and we'll go from there. And that's how we're going to decide what to do next. That tells me you don't have a roadmap. You're going to listen to the player base for what they're going to do. That means like that to me, that's insane by itself. That was insane then, even before I did Dawntrail, for a story-based game. But now realizing that they didn't actually do the roadmap stream like they did before, it only just reinforces this idea that I have.
Screenshots in Korean, like 1 new screenshot or 2 new screenshots out of China for like ultimate. you know?
Yeah.
And then he went to like PAX Australia. He went to a whole bunch of different live events. And at every live event, there was really no news. In fact, like TGS, we didn't get a single interview out of him from TGS. We didn't get an interview out of PAX other than what was on stage.
Yeah, there wasn't news.
We basically got no news cycle. The only thing that we kept getting throughout the entirety of that about 2.5 month time frame before we got to the most recent live letter was that they understood there was feedback on Wookamat and that Pick Them Answer was too strong. That was like 90% of every interview that came out. And it's like, yeah, we get it. We know. It's been discussed. It can only be addressed so many times. And we get that the interviewers aren't like not going to ask questions about these things or not going to engage in these discussions. But that was like, when we're looking for new information, news, some sort of signal that the game is advancing, we didn't get that. And listen.
So Mr. Happy is someone who usually does try to cover every interview that Yoshi P does. And so like he usually, if there's any event that's going on that Yoshi P is going to be at, Mr. Happy is one of these people that is going to be aware of it. And I'm not like that. I typically have, sometimes I'll do it if there's like some big thing that came out, but I don't always do that. I used to, but now I don't really. But I did notice that there had been a really long period of time when I just wasn't hearing anything about the game. And I'm a content creator and I'm aware of that. So, and I'm supposed to be more plugged into the game than most people. The thing is that these events and these interviews and the news cycle is another piece of the puzzle that helps generate hype for this game. And I feel like they just don't care about hype very much. They don't realize how important hype is to the general ecosystem of the game outside of the game. And we're talking about content creation, we're talking about news, we're talking about getting the word out about the game, people being interested and like learning about it as a place to be. It's more than just Facebook ads saying play for free. Okay. There's a whole, in the modern world of promoting your video game, there's this whole extra apparatus around it that I feel like they have been neglecting, and to the game's detriment.
It's great to want to connect with the community. You haven't seen them in years. The first time they've been to Korea since 2018. Like, I get it. It's very, very important to do. But I don't think that's a reason to just basically not have any news about the game for 3 months. Because you know what news does? Not just for content creators, but for players as a whole.
Yeah.
People want to feel like the next thing is getting closer. And when when it's radio silence about anything about a patch or an expansion.
Oh my God, that's true.
I don't know about you. I get nervous. Like, I'm like, it's still happening, right? Like, it is because they've been consistent, but like, it's nerve-wracking.
I hear you, dude.
I can only hear the Wookamat conversation so many times in an interview before I'm like, what else is happening? That's why every little like one piece of news comes out, and we're just like, yo, grab that one thing. We got to talk about that for 3 weeks until something else happens. Come on. So at its core,
dude, I've been there. And I used to try to do this. Grab the little piece of news and let's talk about it for 3 weeks. That's what I used to try to do. And one day I decided that I just don't want to do that anymore because it's annoying. Like, I love this game so much, but I feel like I can't be busting my ass doing PR and marketing for the game if they're not going to do it. Okay. Like, it's crazy. It's just too much. It's too much. Like, if there's something cool to talk about, we'll talk about it. Awesome. We will. That's why we did the live letter, talking about the live letter today. But like, shit, man. Like, if they want there to be, like, they need to release content. They need to release video. They need to do this stuff for there to be excitement and hype. Shit.
Dawntrail has every issue imaginable when it comes to inspiring long-term expansion hype. You released all of your stuff in the first month and then went radio silent for 2.5. It just doesn't work. There needs to be a better flow of information or a better flow of content, or both. Ideally, I think we all want that. But They just
This is such a crazy point that I didn't even, I know I'm pausing him a lot, but Mr. Happy, I did not even think about this before because I don't cover the news as much as you do. But it's such a crazy fact that not only have we had a content drought, there's also been a news drought on top of it. On top of it.
didn't deliver on either of those things. And now 7.1 is going to roll around. We have a lot of stuff to do and talk about, you know, and obviously that will inform us as to like how to predict things going forward. More story discussion happens, but it's still a lot of, how do I say, it's a lot of content that's still made for very particular groups of people and less kind of widespread approachable stuff. You know, you have the Chaotic Alliance raids, which are probably going to have a decent amount of appeal, assuming the rewards are decent. You have Ultimate, which, you know,
Yeah, but they're releasing it on Christmas Eve.
obviously has its usual crowds.
Yeah.
And the race and
But we're gonna
everything
do
like
it.
that.
We will do
You have
it.
the new Extreme. You know, you have Mount Farms. You have Allied Society quests. People want to stay on top of those. Use them to level classes they haven't leveled yet.
True.
They're all there. They're all good. But there's just still nothing that makes you go, I'm going to be playing this and content for the next even 2 to 2.5 months for a lot of people. I'm not even going to say the full patch cycle of 19 weeks. I'll say for 2 to 2.5 months. People are like, you know, I'll check out Hildebrand when it comes out, but I'll be done with that in an hour, you know, or I'll check out the completed role quests or the completed crafting gathering quests, but that'll also probably just be about an hour or two, you know?
Yeah.
It's a lot of one and done stuff that
It's one and done.
doesn't make you go, just doesn't inspire confidence. So what?
There's nothing that, like, unless you're planning to prog Ultimate for the next several months, slowly, there's nothing that's like, ooh, I better, like, this thing is gonna keep me busy and occupied. It's gonna keep my guild busy for several weeks or months in the future until the next content drops. Yeah.
Actually needs to happen. I think both of those things need to change. I think if they had at least had a decent news kind of trickling when it came to the patch, that this wouldn't have felt as bad. The fact that we missed an entire live letter we were all expecting was definitely a major, major letdown part of this. But I think you need to address the content.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to propose you launch the expansions largely the same, but focus on pushing out something that engages more of your player base earlier. That could be exploration zones, relic grinds, cosmic exploration, something that you promised in those expansion reveals and those fan festivals, those like something of those needs to hit sooner than 7.2x, than 7.3x.
It'll be
It can't
7.35.
just be things that we have to go, well, we'll get it eventually. I guess I'll play something else until then.
He's telling you to play other stuff till then, though. That's the thing. It's not just people. He literally said at the live letter, go play other stuff. Do it whenever and play other stuff. Like, how did they not see that this is an issue for an MMO, a live service MMO with a subscription fee?
Let's say 8.0. This is I'm not saying they'll do this. This is all speculation / proposal at this point. 8.0, release it the same as usual. You have MSQ, you have the 2 extreme trials, whatever quality of life, you know, updates to
We
the
have
fate
extreme
system,
trial.
new dungeons.
That's something to farm out if you're interested.
Standard, but you know, they usually throw in some stuff there, things we weren't expecting, or new like UI features. There's normally some stuff that's pretty exciting in all that mix. Like, I mean, we got the dual die system, for example. That's not content, but it's really great that the game got it when it came to the expansion releasing, and we'll gradually be adding it more and more. So I don't think you even change that. I think you leave the exact launch as is. People will be leveling jobs. There is the normal mode raid after a couple of weeks. There is the savage mode raid a couple weeks more after that. And I think that first month generates enough excitement on its own. However, there is one thing that I think they could do. I think in the 0.05 patch, I think releasing the treasure dungeon is fine. I think they should release maybe one that's not the standard format. Maybe just shake it up and don't add that standard format one. They've even mentioned doing this, so we might not see the roulette wheel or the standard treasure map sometime in the near future. Maybe they might replace it, or maybe they just add a third one. But I think you need to be like, oh, it's not just treasure maps. We're doing this to it. Like, we're making it better in this way. We're changing it in this way. We're giving players more agency and engaging with it. Solo treasure dungeons, instead of it being the 8-player treasure dungeons, add the solo treasure dungeons in there as well.
Yeah, that's a
Get
great
players
idea.
wanting to do both the single player and The 8-player ones, maybe even give them separate cooldowns so they can engage with the treasure map system more frequently. It may lower the value of the items in there, but it may also get players engaging with the system more. Also, it's been almost 10 years since this happened, but at one point they released a PvP map in 0.05. Seal Rock came out alongside Gordius Savage. And I think that's great. I think it's just as bad that while, we meme on PvP, it also shouldn't be 19 weeks before PvPers really feel like they have anything to do, before they get major balance changes, before they get a new map or something.
I mean, that is actually a good point about the balance changes for PvP. Like, when it comes to PvP, they need balancing happening more often. They need, like, incremental patches and stuff addressing things in between and reacting more quickly to issues. That's the nature of PvP, but I think that the game doesn't have a budget for it. Actually, I think that the game needs to have a dedicated PvP team that only works on PvP, and that's their whole job. Like the devs that only work on PvP, the devs that are coming up with new maps, that are coming up with new game modes, that are improving things, that are working on balancing, like that needs to be a whole other team that I don't think that Square Enix is willing to put the money into right now.
Makes them feel seen. And I think that 0.05 alongside Savage is a good time to do that. Now, here's where things get interesting. I think you can leave I think I said 7.05 instead of like 8.01 or 8.05, whatever. The X01 and X05. I think at that point, you're only 4 weeks into the expansion. And under a normal circumstance, that would mean 15 weeks more until a patch. That's too much. I think they need to aim for another update before the 0.1 patch, like a 0.06 or a 0.08, that has some form of long-form content. Do it like, I'm going to say 10 to 12 weeks out instead of 8 weeks. I feel like people will want those first, like, however many weeks to largely work on Savage stuff, or at least the Savage Raiders will, but you don't want to give them 8 weeks. Like, they can do other things. They log in, it takes an hour to clear the fights, and then they move on. Heck, I would like 2 more fights in Savage, but that's not what this video is about. So like they could, if they want to release like the exploration content here, or even begin the relic quest, like even if your relic quests are eventually going to be a part of exploration content, at the very least, they're effectively just grinds, right? And not tombstones. Again, please, for the love of God, not tombstones again. But you could release relic quests, tie them into the story of the exploration zone, and then they could do the thing where you either need to advance it through the exploration zone or you can advance it outside of it. I think they were onto something with that with Bozia. But get something that gets players engaging with each other and engaging with game systems. I think they need that like 10 to 12 weeks into the expansion release. That also gives them a little bit more time. You probably have a live letter before that, and then you can do the 0.1 preview live letter a few weeks after that.
Okay, so you're suggesting that they add an exploration zone with a relic grind in the beginning of the expansion instead of at the end, so that people who join for the expansion are like, hell yeah, there's stuff that we can do together with other players. I mean, it's a good idea, but then like, what are people going to do at the end of the expansion's life cycle? Basically, they would have to come up with something else. They would have to come up with more content, like more than they're doing, a lot more, like triple the amount of content that they're making right now is how much there would need to be. They would need to go back to the system where there's 4 freaking exploration zones, and the first one releases like before 0.1, and I just don't see it happening at all. I just do not see how. They need something that they can actually create that won't be as gigantic, that will be smaller scale but still innovative, that will get people doing things together more. I don't know what it would be, but it feels like it feels so impossible to me that they would do it. Like, the closest thing that I think we are getting is this 24-man boss fight that you can bring in 24 people to. That's a lot of people. This is large scale group content. So it's like them putting this now in December tells me that this is something they're considering. They realize the game needs, and this is something people might want to do repeatedly. It has 730 gear in it. You can farm it infinitely, but we'll see how long it lasts, first of all. Second, it reuses a lot of assets from what I've seen. So this is a way for them to save money, it seems like. They have to come up with something else. They need to come up with some new thing that is more than just one boss fight.
So you use that spare
Collection
time, that
system
spare,
like
that,
WoW
like
has
4 to
maybe,
6
yeah.
weeks, or I guess in that case, like 6 to 8 weeks to hold another live letter, which carries on the excitement while people are still doing their weekly reclears, while people are still leveling jobs, then gets them to the next thing. You need to effectively have like one piece of news or one piece of content
Yeah.
every 4 to 6 weeks, ideally. And anything less than that is, I don't think, acceptable. So yeah, 0.06, 0.08, whatever you want to call it, 10 to 12 weeks out, add something that players will be able to engage in for more than an hour or two. Not just like a little story quest, like a wrap up to the role. Do something of significance in that time. Then release the 0.1 patch kind of the same, you know, like whatever. If you want to do chaotics again in 8.1, do it. You know, Ultimate, Unreal, Extremes. Honestly, Unreal should also not have to wait till 0.1. They could put Unreal in the 0.06, whatever 08 projection I did on top of something else. Unreal doesn't need to wait until 0.1 before you introduce anything at all. Like honestly, even in 0.05, like 4 weeks in, like just do it. But yeah, Allied Society, the 24-man raid, new MSQ, whatever updates you're going to do them in the 0.1 patch as you normally did in the 0.1x patch. But then at some point, also release either, I guess I'll use Cosmic Exploration, use whatever your Cosmic Exploration equivalent would be, or update the previous thing so that like the next step, like if you added relics and they're tied into the exploration zone story-wise, then do the exploration zone here and continue your relic quest. Get something like that going as soon as possible. Relic quests have always been a means for the average player who's not doing hardcore raids to get in, communicate with people, work towards something, and it gets the people who are hardcore, who like collecting, engaged in the systems, playing with lots of different people, or grinding something out. It's still kind of artificial, but it does do the job, and it keeps people talking, and it keeps people engaged, and it's just better overall. And then your news cycle kind of fixes itself from that point on. You can keep following similar enough trends in that regard to make sure that it never feels like the game is being neglected, and there's a decent number of activities to go.
I feel like if they moved up this exploration zone stuff to the very beginning of the expansion, then the middle of it would feel empty. Like the content droughts are inevitable as long as there's not enough content to last this amount of time between patches. That's all there is to it. It's just they need to they need to think outside the box here. They need to find different ways to make people engage with the content. Like someone suggested the collection system from World of Warcraft. Fix your collection shit. That alone would probably be enough for a whole expansion. Keep people busy, for real. Give us a collection log and let us go through every dungeon, every raid in the whole game and collect everything that there is and just let it go into my collection. That would actually keep me busy for this whole expansion while y'all figure out whatever the hell else you need to do. Okay. Fix that one thing, and you can spend the time that you've saved figuring out what to do for 8.0. Okay, because this is what do I do in World of Warcraft when I'm bored and I don't want to raid and I just want to do something chill? I get transmog sets. I get mounts. I get pets that just go straight into collections. You know, that's what I would do. It's just, I feel like moving stuff around. I do agree that Mr. Happy is right in saying that, okay, when you think about the life cycle of an expansion, of a MMO expansion, everybody comes at the start of the expansion, the big expansion hype, the launch, and then right now we have massive fall off, huge fall off. Why is that? Because ain't shit going on after the launch happened. And no news, no new content, ain't shit happening. So the fall off is massive. And he's thinking, how can we mitigate this fall off at the best, most healthiest time for the game, which is launch time? Well, put in some shit. So instead of you will still have some fall off, that's inevitable, but instead maybe it will, by having the content bump it up a little, you know, it might ease it somewhat. It might keep more people subbed in the long term, more people willing to deal with content drought than people who just came for expansion and bounced immediately, right? Make sure people do at least one patch together. more people in that first patch and have them thinking, okay, well, I'll be here for the next patch instead of I'll be here for the next expansion, because that's how people are treating the game now. They're treating it as I'll be there for the next expansion, or I'll be there for the for the expansion launch, and then I'll come back for 0.5. That's how people act. And why shouldn't they? When you tell them that's how to act, when you literally get on the live letter and say, hey, you don't have to do this right now. You can just do it whenever. Okay, then I'll do it in a year when you have content. Thank you.
Through for that first 6 to 8 months, which is really what you need. You can't have an expansion release and then just say nothing. It just doesn't work.
I think it's not healthy for an MMO.
The goodwill is only going to carry you so far. So those are just a few basic ideas. Trust me, I'm with you. I'm sure you're all like, oh, that's not enough. They could do this. Listen, I agree, but I'm trying to work within the realm of reality here. Final Fantasy XIV makes a lot of money, but that's not money in does not mean money out for the game, as you're all aware. Generally, a company's profits are all kind of thrown into a pool and then sent to all the different teams. Not to mention, Yoshi P has stated more money is not going to solve their issues. They need qualified hires, which has actually been the bigger problem because they have to speak Japanese and they have to be qualified designers. And on top of that, they then need enough artists to actually execute. There's a lot I have to say about it because that's obviously true, but I don't know enough about it to really comment too much further because
I don't work there.
Feel like
I'm not
if you have the bigger budget, then you probably can get those people. But if you don't have a large enough budget at all, then how can you look to hire as much as you really need to? Like it's tough. It's a lot more complicated than that. I've been a part of like ticket sending and QA. Like I've done that in like other work that isn't related to streaming. And I know it's not that simple. So I don't want to say just throw more money at it. I know some of you who may be project managers or work with teams know that's not how it works. But
I think it might help.
It's hard to see the team growing reflected in the game's overall playability. And I think that needs to change. And we do know that they are doing restructuring. So they even bring that up in the article as well. So that may lead to a better workflow that leads to a better amount of content.
That was the biggest cope in the article. The article is like, oh, but Yoshi P has been talking to the CEO of Square Enix and they're like restructuring how they do things. And I was like, okay. So for 8.0, they're going to have money? Will we have voice acting for the main story quests in 8.0? Or
which leads to this feeling not happening in the future. There's just, it's just, as you can tell, there's just so many facets. It's such an interesting discussion to have that I went in this with a kind of plan and ended up on kind of a ramble. But
you did.
That's just how it is. You know, we've got a live letter coming up. We've got the patch coming up. We've got stuff to be excited about for the next several weeks, month, whatever.
Month.
But we have to address it again after Ultimate's done.
For the next month, we will have a month of content. Buns. Time to at least, we will have a month to do stuff.
After Hildebrand's done, after all of our one-time content is
done, stuff.
There's going to be a lot of.
Then what?
We need to address it again.
What do we do then?
This is going to happen again, going from point 1 to point 2, most likely.
Okay.
So I'm nervous. You're nervous, and even with Monster Hunter Wilds coming out in February to buy us some of that time, that doesn't mean that we don't want better. But yeah, all right. I think I'm going to be done.
Wow.
Rambling here.
Oh my god,
we got heated in that one. Yeah.
Wait, that's heated for you?
Bad. Some of you probably are like, "Oh my god, he's gone off the deep end."
What? Man, I actually thought it was very refreshing. I didn't think you got heated at all. I just thought you were just saying what's on your mind, like normally. But this community, I bet there's people that will think that you got heated. That's how fucked up that is. You know what? I think playing WoW really helped me have perspective on like what does it mean to actually be pissed off at the game, and WoW players will show you that. And it's not what you did here today, I promise.
No, I'm like this in other videos. You should hear me on my weekly Q&As because I end up like this most of the time.
I thought it was
or
fine.
on stream,
just talking normally.
But yeah, I think my point is made. So let me know what you think in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned. I'll have all the news for the upcoming patch stuff, guides, thoughts, everything about 7.1 Ultimate. I'll be doing live prog for Ultimate again,
Cool.
which is looking like it's going to be November 26th. So be sure
Awesome.
to tune in for that. And
So you're not doing Thanksgiving?
I'm gonna go drink some water and chill out.
Okay.
I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.
That was a nice video. I really liked it. It felt honest. That's what I liked about it. It was very good. It was incredibly refreshing and honest. I just feel like at this point, the FF14 content creators are like, well, it is what it is. We're doing what we can, waiting for the content to... Okay, well, I'll give you the link to this video, and you should definitely go and give him a like, give him a sub. There you go. Yep, there it is. There's a link in the chat. The content release schedule killed the enthusiasm that the game had. Thanks for talking about it. Please keep talking about this. I love the game, but it's unfortunate how stale it is after 2 months into the expansion. I know that, but what you gonna do about it? Other than, well, what Happy is doing about it is the right thing. Talk about it. That's all we can do. And wait. But yeah, next week is patch, next Tuesday. It was just a great article from Harvey. And so I hope that articles like that continue as we proceed into the future.